and welcome. My name is Sterling Hope, and I am an Educational Specialist degree candidate at Kennesaw State University in Instructional Technology. And this presentation will cover my research completed over the course of this program. My study was titled Struggling Writers, a Case of 3 Students. So let's look at an infographic that I have created. It'll take us through the highlights of my study. Okay, so here's our infographic for the Struggling Writers, a case of 3 students that I just mentioned. And so let's go through the key components of the study. Okay, so writing is one of man's greatest achievements. Without the ability to record history, many stories may have been lost through oral tradition as groups of people died off. And writing is most notably credited to the ancient Egyptians, and that's from History World 2001. And I included that because writing is just so all-encompassing to our everyday lives, and without it, it's really a skill that we have to have. And writing has allowed us to look back into history and see how things have changed and the thinking of our ancestors. So it really is a very key component to our culture. My research question is, will using predictive software such as Solo 6 within the word processing program aid students in producing more writing than just with the pencil and paper? And I think sometimes, and we'll kind of look at it and talk about it towards the end, that as teachers we're really beholden to let's get our pencil out and get our journal out. So does the technology help our struggling students? And so the purpose overall was to examine technology or technologies, both either online or software, because I did kind of play with a couple different choices, such as voice recording and transcription, like Audacity, VoiceThread, using Edmodo and blogging, and even screencasting. But I came down to Solo 6 because it was most appropriate for my group of students. Some of the current literature, and here are a couple quotes from that, and that the literature states for struggling students, writers need to be scaffolded in their lessons about the elements of writing, Mayer and Alexander 2011. And I think for any struggling student, scaffolding is obviously a wonderful tool. The more students read and write, the better they become in both areas. And that's pretty common sense, Howard 2012. And then communication is front and center, and writing skills are the key component that touch all aspects of our lives. And I just mentioned that, the ancients found a way to pass forward their knowledge, and writing is the key. And as we move forward, it still continues to be the key. Okay, and so we have to really make sure that we're passing on those skills to all of our students. And my participants were 3 third grade students within my classroom. I invited them to participate, and I chose them because they were struggling writers, and they were struggling in other areas as well. My students, I had 2 male, 1 EIP, Early Intervention Program, and the other male was ESOL. My 3rd student was a female who was classified as English as a Second Language, or ESOL. All right. The research design and methodology of my study, I chose to use an ethnographic collective case study with qualitative data collection based on the state writing rubric. And I really wanted to focus, I did a case study because I really wanted to focus on those types of students and those 3 students because they were having such a difficult time. And then I did want to have actual data. The data comes from the Georgia State Writing Rubric, which in 5th grade gets sent off to the state, and in 3rd grade we use the same rubric to develop a portfolio. I looked at 4 areas as based on the rubric. We looked at their ideas, what could they produce and what they were thinking. Conventions would be grammar, punctuation, spelling. Style is probably our most subjective area, with their writer's voice, which is probably the most difficult for most students, and especially your struggling ones. And then organization. Can we put it beginning, middle, and end? Does it have a flow? Are we starting to use our transitions? Okay. So the data was collected, and I have my data charts coming up, but the data collected was over the course of a semester, and unfortunately the semester that I chose, we had 2 weeks worth of ice and snow. So that kind of cut into how many times they got the intervention. So my goal was a 9-week period. I ended up with about 7 weeks of writing instruction. The students had a pre-test and a post-test, as you can see here on the data chart. And when we did the ideas post-test, pre-test and post-test, they all started with 4 points. Student number 1 was my male early intervention student, and he made 3 times the gain. He ended up with 12 points. My students 2 and 3, my male and female ESOL students, didn't make quite the same gain, but they did make gains in being able to produce ideas and come up with ideas for their narrative writing. Now, in the area of style, again, that's one of our hardest ones. They all started with 2 points, and my EIP male student, again, made 3 times the gain to 6 points, and my ESOL boy and girl doubled their points at 4. So we're making progress in areas as we go. Okay. This is organization, putting things in order. They all started with 3 points. Again, my EIP male made 3 times the growth to 9 points, and my ESOL student, male and female, not as much, but they did make more than half the point gain there. In our final area, we have conventions, and that's the largest area of growth I saw with these students. And I also have to say that Solo 6, the predictive software technology we were using, would help them with that. It would predict their spelling. It reads it aloud so they could hear if they needed punctuation. So that, I think, is part of why we saw the most gains here. Student 1, my EIP male, had 13 points and did a 20-point jump to 33 in his convention use. Student 2, my ESOL female, started off with 9 points and went to 21 points. My ESOL male student number 3 went from 9 points to 25 points. So the software, the predictive software, definitely helped everyone in all areas of their writing. And some of the conclusions that can be drawn, let's step back to the data. The data, I used paired t-tests to analyze each of those pre and post tests as we went. The data suggested that I had a p-test of 2, and so for all of my, we definitely saw growth in all areas, and it really showed that there was statistical difference for there, but in conclusion, and some of the limitations, the limited sample size definitely skews that statistical difference because there were only 3 students. It did help them, and that was the overall conclusion, that using technology like Solo 6 would help them. It just gave them the confidence to hear what they were doing, make sure they were spelling correctly, getting that grammar in, and then helping them organizing it and allowing them to move it around a little more fluidly than if we just got out our journal. I did only use EIP and ESOL subgroups, and so that's a limitation. So even though we did see some statistical gains and positive statistical gains, because of our limitations, our findings aren't as valid as they could be as if we did use a larger population and more students in the study. So that's something to look forward to next year, and continuing the use of Solo 6 in our writing and the state rubric and grading them. We have to pre-test them and post-test them, and so now we can take it and do the analysis of the data that we already have and continue to see if that Solo 6 predictive software will help them and help all students improve their writing. So in reflection of the year and of the capstone project and of my research, Struggling Writers, a case of 3 students, I felt overall it went really well. I felt that those 3 students made gains, one more significantly than the other 2. The one that I was really most proud of was my ESOL male. He went from refusing to write and writing absolutely nothing to being able to write 4 or 5 sentences on his own and including a picture with his work. And so by using the technology, I gave him that opportunity, and I scaffolded his lessons very slowly so he would eventually be able to give me the ideas. Style, he was still not very strong with style, but we were able to organize his writing. We were able to work on the conventions through the use of the technology so he could see it, he could hear it, which is really most important for him since he was his English as a second language learner. My other twos made gain, my EFP male and my ESOL female. They made gains and I was very pleased. And so the use of the technology and through learning about technology and how to help not only my ESOL and EIP students, but to help all of my students. They felt very engaged and very connected to what they were doing. So I would recommend the use of technology in writing to others. It's not something that there's a large body of data and research done on, because I think a lot of teachers tend to go right for the pencil, right for the journal, let's draw about it, let's use our hands. And so hopefully the transition over time, because a lot of people blog, a lot of people email, a lot of people post comments, they Twitter, and they Facebook, and so those skills need to be on the computer and they need to be able to write and edit and move. And those are skills that hopefully this year I can take my Solo 6 project from this and continue to build on that and making better writers through the use of technology. Now, it's not to say we won't get out our pen and paper and put pictures with it, because art has a wonderful writing component to it as well. But like the infographic, they can make those too. So the overall consensus for me is completing this research was an amazing learning experience. It's something I would not have tried if I weren't working in this program, and I'm very glad I did. Thank you so much for your time and listening, and have a great day.